The notice was nailed right onto my front gate. Final warning: vacate the premises within 30 days or face eviction. My stomach turned cold as I read it. This wasn't just about fines anymore. The HOA was threatening to take away the land my family had worked for 3 generations. Backhand index pointing right. If you enjoy powerful HOA revenge stories where justice always finds a way, make sure to subscribe. We've got plenty more true-to-life stories, and you won't want to miss them. I had grown up on this farm. My grandfather built the barn with his own hands. My father planted the oak tree that shaded our porch. And now it was my turn to keep the land alive, raising chickens, tending crops, and caring for the cattle. For us, it wasn't just property. It was heritage. It was home. However, when our small rural area was incorporated into a newly formed residential HOA, everything changed. Suddenly, men in polos and clipboards were telling me how high my grass should be, how many animals I could keep, and even what color my barn was allowed to be. At first, I tried to be polite. One afternoon, a board member came by. "Mr. Hayes, these animals aren't permitted under the new zoning. You'll need to reduce your livestock." I raised an eyebrow. "I've had these cattle here for 20 years. You can't just decide they don't belong." He smiled smugly. "We can, and we did." I thought he was bluffing. But then the letters began: fines for unauthorized livestock, unsanctioned outbuildings, even non-compliant fencing. Every week, another envelope, another demand. My wife worried constantly. "How can they do this? This is our land," she whispered late at night. I held her hand. "They're overreaching. The law's on our side. Don't worry." But inside, I was worried too. The threats escalated. One morning, as I fed the chickens, I saw 2 HOA enforcers standing at the edge of my field, scribbling notes. "Morning," I called. They didn't answer. One just snapped a photo of my barn. Later that week, I received a letter stating that my entire property was out of compliance and that eviction proceedings would commence if I didn't correct violations. I marched to the next HOA meeting, letter in hand. The small clubhouse was full. I stood in front of the board. "This is harassment," I said. "My farm has stood here longer than this HOA. You don't get to erase history with a piece of paper." Karen, the board president, smirked. "Rules are rules. This is a residential community now. Farms bring down property values. Either you adapt, or you leave." Murmurs rippled through the room. A neighbor whispered, "That's not right." Another said quietly, "He's been here longer than any of us." But Karen slammed her gavel. 30 days. That's final. I walked out with my jaw clenched, fury burning in my chest. That night, my cousin Tom, the county sheriff, stopped by for dinner. He noticed how quiet my wife was and asked what was wrong. I handed him the eviction notice. His eyes narrowed as he read it. "They served you this?" he asked. "Yeah," I said bitterly. "They think they can kick me off my own farm." He shook his head. "That's not how the law works. HOA rules don't override property rights. This smells like intimidation." My wife looked up hopefully. "So, they can't actually evict us?" Tom leaned back in his chair, his voice calm but firm. "Not legally. But if they try, they'll regret it." That was the first spark of hope I'd felt in weeks. But the HOA didn't back down. 2 weeks later, I woke to the sound of trucks pulling up. A group of HOA reps stood at my gate, waving papers. One of them shouted, "We're here to enforce eviction." I stepped outside, fists clenched. "This is my land. You've got no right." Karen, standing smugly behind them, sneered, "Pack your things, cowboy. You're done here." My heart pounded. This was it, the showdown I had dreaded. But even as anger surged, I kept my voice calm. "You've made a big mistake," I told her. "And you're about to find out just how big." Because what Karen and her board didn't know was that my cousin, the sheriff himself, had already promised me something. If they tried to cross the line, he'd be there. And when he showed up, the HOA's arrogance would come crashing down. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and polished marble, a mix of tradition and formality. I sat at the defendant's table, heart pounding but steady. Across from me, the HOA board members, led by smug-faced President Clark, looked like they were preparing for a victory parade. Their lawyer shuffled papers with rehearsed arrogance, clearly thinking this case would be open and shut. But then, the bailiff called Sheriff David Matthews to the stand. Heads turned. My cousin, in full uniform, walked confidently up front. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and his presence filled the room. Clark visibly paled. David wasn't just any sheriff, he was respected across 3 counties for being fair, firm, and unshakable. David raised his right hand, swore in, and sat down. The HOA's lawyer leaned forward, smirking. Sheriff, would you say this farm is in violation of community code? David didn't even flinch. No. In fact, this farm predates the HOA by over 40 years. Their attempt to enforce new rules against long-standing agricultural property isn't just invalid, it's harassment. The courtroom murmured. I saw Clark stiffen in his seat. David continued, voice steady as stone. When my cousin called me, I personally reviewed land deeds, county zoning maps, and the HOA's charter. They have no authority over his farm operations. Furthermore, I've investigated their actions, trespassing, issuing false notices, and even threatening physical removal. That's unlawful. The judge leaned forward. Unlawful, you say? Yes, Your Honor, David replied. They attempted to carry out a civil eviction with no court order, using intimidation. That crosses into criminal territory. The HOA's lawyer stammered. Oh, objection, Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The judge slammed the gavel. Overruled. I'd like to see those documents. David handed over the stack he'd meticulously prepared. Watching Clark's face as the judge flipped through them was pure satisfaction. His smirk was gone, replaced with a twitch of panic. When it was my turn, I stood and spoke simply. Your Honor, I've worked this land my whole life. The HOA didn't build this farm, didn't maintain it, and has no right to strip me of it. My family has lived here for generations. They showed up on my land with threats, lies, and armed intimidation. That's not community leadership, it's abuse of power. For the first time, Clark looked small. After hours of testimony, the judge finally leaned back, removed his glasses, and gave his ruling. This court finds the HOA acted outside its authority, attempted unlawful eviction, and engaged in harassment. Their eviction notice is null and void. Furthermore, they will pay damages for emotional distress, lost income, and legal fees. Gasps filled the courtroom. Clark's lawyer sat down hard, defeated. But the judge wasn't done. He turned to the HOA board. And as for your conduct, I will be referring this case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. Sheriff Matthews, I trust you'll see this through? David gave a sharp nod. Yes, Your Honor. The board members looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Some whispered furiously at Clark, others just stared at the floor, ashamed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I wasn't used to cameras, but David handled them like a pro. Sheriff, what do you say about the HOA's actions? One reporter asked. David spoke calmly. No one, HOA or otherwise, gets to abuse their neighbors. My cousin stood his ground, and the law backed him. This isn't just about one farm. This is about holding people accountable when they think they're untouchable. I felt pride swell in my chest. Not just for the victory, but for the man standing beside me. Back at the farm, neighbors gathered with food, drinks, and cheers. They'd all been watching, waiting, and supporting quietly. Now, the celebration felt like a shared win. Kids ran through the fields, adults raised toasts, and for once, the air wasn't heavy with HOA threats. Clark and his board eventually resigned, disgraced and powerless. A new, fairer HOA leadership was voted in, neighbors who actually cared about the community instead of bullying it. One evening, as the sun set over the barn, I stood with David. "Couldn't have done it without you, cousin," I said. David grinned. "You could've. But sometimes it just takes a badge to shut down bullies faster." We laughed, and I finally breathed easy. My farm wasn't just saved, it was proof that standing your ground, with the right people by your side, could bring even the most arrogant tyrants to their knees. And for the first time in years, the land felt peaceful again.